So, Mark, one of the I would say the most common question that we get asked, especially at shows, like Munich, for example, is why have you selected belt drive? You know, you designed a turntable from scratch. You could have chosen any drive system. And I think it's fair to say that you and I, after many, many years of being hobbyists, and you in particular being a designer, an engineer, we've owned pretty much every type of drive system. And I personally have loved all of them for different reasons. So I think the first thing we can say is that we're not in any way against any drive system, because there's some phenomenal belt drive, rim drive, direct drive.
The goal is smooth power delivery.
Absolutely.
If you can, and by the way, the lathe that the record is cut on is quite often an imperfect rotational device.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. We assume that it is perfect. So our test records that are cut on...
which are our reference points.
Our reference points, if we realise that that is an imperfect rotational encoding, so it has encoded the imperfections of its drive into the device that we then are using as a reference to measure from.
Absolutely.
So once you get your head around that, if you can find another way of measuring speed, and that can be with something as simple as a mechanism used during the Second World War for Norden bomb sites.
Do you remember those days?
I do, very clearly, at least from YouTube. You can get an inductive encoder with a high degree of accuracy that can generate a speed signal, and then you can measure the accuracy of that speed signal. So there's other ways of measuring turntable speed that are superior to the test record. So one of the best ways actually is to listen to it, believe it or not, and you'll hear some of the artifacts of an imperfect drive system. So if we assume that any of the three major drive systems, being rim drive, where a little wheel spins on the outside of the platter and conveys an external motor turning a platter, typically that motor has to spin at a faster speed than the actual platter. Then you have the next one, which is belt drive, where you have a motor spinning at a faster speed to the main platter, and you couple it via a belt of some description, stretchy, non-stretchy, tooth belt, non-tooth belt, all those variances there. Or the direct drive, where you use the actual motor and bearing of the turntable as one unit, which then you have to turn it at a much slower speed, but you have to turn it smoothly.
Well, so, let's go through the benefits and challenges of all of those.
So in an ideal world, if it was a direct drive, we'd like to have some form of encoding that reads the speed as it goes around, and we compare that to a reference signal of some description, some clock. If we were to create an optical encoding system where we scribe little black marks on a round disc, and we get that perfectly aligned, and we put 1,000 lines on that, and then we have a little electric eye that is reading those lines going by and counting them, and a computer that compares the count with the expected amount of lines that should be passing by in a given time frame, a cycle of time.
And it slows down when needed,
it
speeds
then
up when
says,
needed.
oh, I've had too many lines go by, so I need to slow you down. Or it says, I haven't had enough lines go by, I'll speed you up. That is a servo. It is monitoring between those 2 points. If I miss one count, for whatever reason, I might be between CPU cycles. The computer can't do anything because it's between cycles, and I'm running it at say 10 megahertz or whatever the chip is. The logic then tells that platter to accelerate, and then it counts too many, and then it says slow down. So it's got this hunting and pecking system per rotation. It makes the whole journey perfectly at 33 1/3. But during that journey, if you were on that train, you would feel the carriage constantly jostling to stay within the speed parameters. And as time's gone by, those systems have got better and better and smoother. But the latest iteration of that finally has got the speed smooth and stable. The turntable that's finally achieved that in 2024 is what, 450,000?
Yeah, almost $500,000.
Almost $500,000 in Australian dollar terms. Because none of the industrial solutions out there could deliver to that performance, which is called smooth power delivery, where there's no hysteresis.
Yes.
So if we then took that 1,000 line optical encoder, because we know that it's bouncing between 2 points, and migrated it across to the belt drive engine, we have to spin that motor, for the order of the example, say 300 times in order to get one revolution of the platter. That means if I miss one line and one count during one of those CPU cycles, and my server says to accelerate or decelerate in that one rotation, when I have to spin 300 times to spin the platter there, my error is washed off.
Yeah, it becomes very tiny.
Becomes very tiny. So my overall smoothness on that rotation means that if I was on that train in the carriage, it'd be a very smooth ride. Now, sometimes I might get around at 33.31, and the next one I'll come around and I'll be at 33.12 or 15. So I'm going to experience broader, slower movements in adjustment of time, but I'm not going to have that fast shunting.
Sure.
So the fast shunting has a signature where it brightens the sound a little bit, whereas the belt system, using the same 1,000 line encoder,
it smooths it out.
We use 5,000 line encoders, so we wash the problem off even further, but is going to lead to a smoother sound. Now, the rim drive version of that, if I was to have that idler wheel, typically they have a faster spinning motor on a intermediate satellite wheel that then engages with the side of the platter. But just say the example, I then have any cogging in that system will couple quicker to the platter than through a belt. The belt has a little bit of give and stretch, and if it's tuned right and it's closely positioned to the main spindle so that there's less belt travel to stretch in, you can tune that effectively to reduce the coupling of noise from the bearing in the motor into the platter. So you're using the belt system as a filter designed to lower the noise signature into the platter.
Got it.
So rim drives have got a high torque capability. They have a high torque like the direct drive has, which gives incredible dynamics and punch and slam, what they're renowned for. However, a belt drive appropriately configured with a high torque motor, a short belt gap, and the right Young's modulus in the belt material can deliver the same slam and dynamics And experienced listeners will say, that doesn't sound like a belt drive, that sounds like a rim drive, but it's lower noise. Or, boy, that's got a lot of torque, I can hear that in the, which is akin to what you did get, but it's much smoother than the direct drives that I've heard. So belts are an imperfect device, so are idlers, so are directs. None of them is perfect. If you want perfection, to push one of those things, it starts to quickly scale in price so that it becomes several orders of magnitude more expensive than commercially broadly acquired.
And Mark, why did you choose to have two belts?
Okay, so grip. So two pulleys, or not two pulleys, two grooves, one pulley, two slightly different belt materials. The resonance of each one can help reduce some of those stretch signatures ever so slightly to give a smoother power delivery. So it's all about...
It was addressing the belt issue.
Belt issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
If I could find one belt that would do the job perfectly, we'd use one belt. In this case, two belts helped.
It helped. Okay.
Yeah. And we're talking small, but
it's all 1 percentage points coming together. So what about having two motors?
I struggle getting one motor quiet and getting one motor's bearing to be as high precision as possible, and getting one pulley to be aligned on said drive system. For my motor types, every motor makes noise. I've got a double the problem if I have two motors creating it, and treble the problem if I've got three motors. Now, typically you use multiple motors to deliver torque because the motor itself is not able to have enough. And the other thought is that it helps center the bearing. So you've got, for example, say a 30 kilogram platter. It's hard to lift physically. A little rubber belt is not going to withstand the precessional forces in a bearing and constrain that platter to stay in the center. It is going to walk around the inside of the bearing, and it may have enough tension on the belt to pull it clunk against the side, but in that case you've got too much slop in your bearing. So it's not going to aid in the centering of the bearing. What it's designed to do is to add more torque to the platter, because each motor is now augmented by the other. Solving that problem with one motor means that you go with a higher torque motor.
So if you've got enough torque in one motor, you don't need to use a second motor.
You don't have to go second, third, fourth, fifth,
For that reason.
For that reason. So it's not about the belt constraining the platter in the centre. It's about torque. Because I also a lot of those motors are only like 9 ounce inches.
Yes.
You can, so 3 times 9, 27, versus a 100 ounce inch motor in one motor. So you can have triple the amount of torque in one motor than you can with 3 of the others. So
the other thing also that comes to mind is that no matter how high quality your motor manufacturer is, no two motors measure exactly the same.
No, they're always.
So as soon as you put another motor in, you've got a conversation going on and control. If you're controlling it by what we call a synchronous sine drive, so you're tweaking the frequency of each one and then the phases, some of them are 2-phase motors, and tuning each of the phases for each motor, the complexity goes up and you're still never able to be perfect. So if you have one motor with high torque and ability to control its ballistics, its ability to speed up and slow down in that servo arrangement, you can program smoothness into that motor. These are the new intelligent type drives in the market, and you can outperform the
traditional synchronous systems.
So belt drive systems using
Smart motors.
smart motors and better technology are not what they used to be 10, 15 years ago.
No.
Tell us about how you set up the motor on a Dohmann turntable, your drive system for the motor.
Yeah. So the way the motor is controlled in its rotation, we're encoding it, and then measuring that through each revolution. We have to run it, say, 300 RPM for 1 RPM of the platter, 450 RPM for 1 rotation at 45, 780 for 78 RPM, or in the case of Stanford University, up to 100 RPM. So we have to run our motor at 1,000 RPM. The way the motor smoothly comes online when you press on, you can control how gently it brings up the platter to speed and how fast to speed. So instead of the motor spinning right from out of the gate super fast and burning rubber, in this case we gently bring the power on so that we preserve the belt life. Then once it's up to speed, we're monitoring that speed over 130,000 times per revolution.
Per revolution of the motor.
Yeah, we're just insane
so you
clock cycle.
Okay.
We have 3 DSPs. Each DSP is generating a sine wave. Those sine waves are then controlling A, B, and C of the 3-phase motor, which is a DC brushless, but it's actually a 3-phase AC motor. We are quadrature encoding, and we are using complex computer logic to control the way that motor addresses an error, how fast it responds, how fast it lets go, or how slow it lets go of the problem, to try and get the smooth power delivery into the platter. So it's an intelligent motor. It's constantly thinking about each revolution and what it's doing to preserve the smoothness and fluidity of the speed. That kind of control used to take a box yay big. It's now shrunk down into basically something smaller than a golf ball. It's incredible.
Well, I can say just personally from my point of view, having had belt drive turntables in the past that did have that sort of overly smooth signature. This is quite a way away. And having direct drive turntables that had that sort of dynamic presentation, but then kind of getting tired of both of them, in my journey. What I love about the Dohmann turntable, of course I'm very biased, is that the belt drive system that you've created has the best of the belt drive attributes. As you said earlier, a lot of clients comment that it doesn't sound like a belt drive because they're using the old paradigm.
Robin Wyatt from Dotter's Corner. Robin is a well-credentialed audiophile and an absolute expert, musically as well, but on idler turntables. And Robin came up to me in a show. He sat there and listened for well over an hour. And he said, "Mark, if I didn't know that this was a belt drive, I swear it was an idler." Because of its dynamic, we called it Pratt, pace, rhythm and timing. And that was an immense compliment, because I really respect what Robin's ear and also his wealth of experience in turntables. So the idler school, to me, I grew up on idlers. I love that sound. I just wanted to push the noise floor lower. And for me, I couldn't do that with the idler system. The belt offered that way of reducing the noise signature, but we had to go high torque to preserve that dynamic and Pratt.
I also think the technology that's in the turntable itself, that we've discussed in previous videos, actually also helps reduce the noise floor. So some people sometimes confuse aggression with dynamics.
Yeah, you don't want that edginess. No, that's not right. It's not in the
that
source.
leading edge kind of
Yeah,
hyper definition.
yeah,
And what I love about it is that you're getting the belt drive smoothness, but you're getting ultra dynamic sound.
yeah, without what I call treacle.
Correct.
Something
Yeah.
that's soporific and smooth and blended together, so that there's nothing that stands out. Because again, that's not what we hear.
Yeah.
Off the tape.
Yeah.
Or the dynamics that you hear in a live sense. So
Well,
yeah, I think there's life left in belt technology. I can see the merits of direct. It lowers cost in a lot of ways, and bearing complexity and chassis complexity. But to really get those smooth attributes, you need to address it like, say, the team at Wilson Benesh have done with their GMT turntable, because that's the first time that I'm hearing direct that I can actually say, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. They've done a great job.
I mean, and I've run like you have.
Yeah.
I'm still running a Kenwood direct drive at home. Love it. I've monkeyed around with so many of the 70s direct drives. They still make music, but I wanted to push the envelope.
And they're still very enjoyable.
Still enjoyable.
It's really good.
But for pushing the envelope, I think the intelligent motor technology, I think, is definitely a valid approach.
My friend, on the topic of enjoyable, I think it might be time for us to go.
Yeah, let's go and have a listen to some music.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks very much,
All right,
Mark.
George. Thanks. Cheers.